Welcome back, everybody. This is our LTW Connects session as part of London Tech Week. Well, I say that, except of course, you don't need me to remind you, we've gone virtual. We'll be back face to face, hopefully in September, with a huge program of events. And yet, of course, nothing can stop us Brits. So we've had some fantastic sessions already. We've just heard Roger Lynch, Global Chief Exec of Condé Nast, that publishing powerhouse, in conversation with Laura Citron from London and Partners, and lots of great questions and chat flying around as well. Thank you for those who have been tweeting on our hashtag LTW Connects. I've really been looking forward to this next conversation because it's not often that you get some of the world's great massive tech companies, still very entrepreneurial, IBM, Intel, sitting down together with some of the startups and scale-ups, comparing notes, sharing what they've all been through. And that's what this next session is all about. Founders Intelligence is the organization that's helped us bring part of this together. Founders Intelligence, what is it? Well, it's an entrepreneur-powered consultancy. Sounds quite refreshing, doesn't it? It was founded by Rob, our next host. He's Rob Chapman. He founded it because he saw a bit of a difference, I understand, between the pace at which the entrepreneurs he was working with operated and the slightly slower pace of the more traditional consultancies. So now, if you look them up, you'll see they're working with some of the world's great companies, including Unilever, Sky, Visa, Facebook, BP, and many more. So the theme is pivoting in the face of disruption. So it's a privilege, really, to welcome to our virtual stage Rob Chapman. Rob, are you there?
I'm here, and welcome to my spare room. So thank you, Ollie. And yeah, I guess your point around pace probably is no longer true. What we've seen in the last 3 months is that pace from every company has been astonishing, and that's kind of what we're going to explore today. And as you said, we have a very exciting panel. In the last half hour in the green room and the conversations before, I can promise you we have some real experts on the panel today. So our topic is pivoting in the face of disruption, as you said, and we're going to explore it in 3 ways. We're going to explore the short-term disruption that we've all faced in the last 3 months and how the different businesses on the panel have responded to that. We're going to look at the human disruption that we've all had and all faced, both as leaders, employees, customers, and everything else. And then we'll talk at the end about the sort of long-term disruption and how businesses can prepare and can innovate to face the new normal, the new uncertainty, or however our panel will predict the new will look like. So to quickly introduce the panel, we have Caroline, so CEO and co-founder of Fluidly, and it is in fact her 3rd company. Incredibly impressive achievements. Fluidly is especially relevant because it uses machine learning to help small companies to manage their cash flow better. And obviously that's been a crucial part of the last 3 months and will continue to be for years to come. So if you're a small company listening, you should Google it now. Flick introduces herself as a hacker and motorbike racer, but the sort of subline is she's also Director of Resilience and Security at IBM, so a true global expert on what we've all just had to face and endure and how companies prepare for the kind of disruption that we've had. Gori, so founder and CEO of UpSkill Digital, so a digital training and transformation consultancy. And obviously, everyone in the world has suddenly had to massively improve their digital skills. So Gori and his business have been rushed off their feet trying to help companies to do that and individuals to do that, of course. And Adrian, so the general manager of Intel in the UK. And he started his career, as he told us, in business continuity planning, and so has deep expertise, but also has led Intel as they've both pivoted in the face of the recent disruption and also been a leading light in how the ventilator program has worked, and has a huge number of ideas to share there. So I guess we'll start by thinking in the short term, as I suggested, and I'd love just to hear firstly kind of what from the panel, what are you most proud of how your companies, or what are the sort of single thing you'd point at in what's made your company resilient in the last 3 months? And maybe Flick, maybe you could start us off. You're on mute there, Flick.
The first technical issue of the day. So good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I see it in three different ways, Rob. So there's business resilience, technical resilience, and personal resilience in the short term. And I'll probably come back to that when you do midterm and long term. So let's look at those three things. The things that we focused on in IBM is making sure that we have a very clear response to helping clients with their short-term needs. And that is what you'd expect, which is connectivity, getting everybody working from home, understanding the demands of what people need to make sure they can continue to run their businesses or in some cases keep their businesses alive. So there's been fantastic stories from so many IBMers that have slept on floors in data centers or not gone home and stayed in locations to make sure things continue to run. But it's mainly looking after overall technology. From a business resilience perspective, we're seeing a lot of companies being so agile, it's unbelievable. I am extremely proud of what IBM has done in their response in terms of working collectively to make sure we're putting an engine together of all the processing power to help us find a cure or treatments, as well as all the things that we're offering. And I've seen a massive speed in same as you, of this agility in that side of things. But businesses are now focusing more on how the hell do I keep my business alive? How do I make sure I can get one person in and out the toilet? How do I get them back to work? And how do I change that overall adoption? From a personal resilience point of view, I'm a mental health first aider, and we've seen a lot of issues and concerns and stresses where people have had to not only work from home, but they've had to work from home and homeschool and look after their parents. So my personal experience, which I share with everyone, is that I'm an asthmatic, a chronic asthmatic. My other half, he works for London Fire Brigade as a station manager, so he's out every day as a key worker. And my son is desperate to get to Cambridge this September and getting rather distressed that actually it's all going to be virtual. So those are the short-term things that we're seeing, but we are seeing a sort of dip in mental health where everybody's trying to work out how they cope from working at home as well. So we have video fatigue. I'm sure all of us will nod when I say video fatigue. So it's also making sure we've got a life-work balance and changing the norms of 9 to 5, being on the phone every single minute of the day so that we can have this sort of health.
I think zoomed out is going to go into the Oxford English Dictionary by the end of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and Caroline, maybe you could pick up on the tech and business side of that, especially because you're seeing it from a different level. We'll come back onto the mental health and personal side later, as I really want to explore that. But Caroline, could you tell us a bit about how your business as a sort of scale-up business is responding, and also how some of your 10,000 clients are as well? Again, we have a mute problem.
No. I mean, I've always been a kind of a nerd when it comes to tech, really fascinated. And my brother is a medic in London Hospital. And so he and I have had a long-standing conversation on coronavirus from probably January, actually. So by the time the lockdown came on the 23rd, we had already moved everybody out of the office much earlier than that. I actually gave notice on the office space in the beginning of March, figuring we weren't going to need it for the next 12 months. And we'd pretty much been in the cloud and moved everybody out very early. So we took an early call on the situation and the longevity of it, made an early plan for that. And it was very much kind of, prepare for the worst, but hope for the best. And I think the thing I'm most proud about, really in terms of the team's response, has been the morale, the togetherness, the kind of adherence to and stick to our values and who we are as a culture and how we fit together. And that shift to remote working was incredibly smooth. And so we were incredibly fortunate, both because we're a business that's in the cloud and the tech anyway, because we'd also it'd been a subtopic of conversation for probably 6 weeks prior to the lockdown that we might have to do it. And so we'd kind of gone early on a lot of that, and that made everything very, very smooth. And it also meant that we were able then to quickly focus on our clients rather than ourselves and our customers, because it's been a really difficult time for the small businesses that we serve. And I'm pretty proud of the team because we were able to get products like new funding for CBILS scheme out, adapt some of our products. That we built a scenario planner for businesses around their cash flow, and quickly adapt to kind of creating COVID scenarios so you can quickly see the effect and impact on your revenues and how that impacts on cash, and help businesses give that kind of control and certainty and confidence around their cash flow, which has been a time of uncertainty, I think really, really difficult for lots of businesses. So yeah, for me personally, it's kind of, I'm proud of the team for making that shift and having such an open dialogue and making that transition relatively smooth, in fact, incredibly smooth, really. And then spending the time and energy on helping our customers.
Great. And Adrian, just picking up on some of the points that have just been made on like how you made such a smooth transition in a small company from Caroline. I believe you did the same in a huge company, locked down 3 weeks early. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we're very fortunate, right? Intel, we're a global company, pretty big, 107,000 people around the world, probably similar size to IBM. But, that doesn't mean to say that we don't care for our employees, our customers, and the communities we operate in. So obviously we had early indication of what had happened in China. We have a big manufacturing facility in China, not in Wuhan, in another place. And then obviously we have our teams in Korea, with all the work that we do with the big career tech giants out there as well. So we got a very early indication. As I say, I really came from understanding disaster recovery many, many years ago, and the events that happened around certainly the UK at that time, which means that you would move the whole office into another office building. And then obviously at Intel, we've always had this flexible working policy, in terms of inclusion of who we hire, whether you've got to look after children, look after elders. We've always had this flexible working methodology. So pretty well much all of our staff, including our admin partners, they all have laptops. So pretty well much anybody at any one time, certainly in the UK, can pick it up. It's a little bit more difficult with test equipment from that point of view. But I think two things that we're kind of really proud of, or certainly I am, obviously we were approached by a number of the consortia around the ventilator program. We managed to find some silicon that was like 13, 14 years old and maybe somebody to help program it in terms of the code that it was actually in. And that was pretty rewarding. And then obviously, as part of our community, Intel buys a lot of protective equipment. We have 16, 17 different types of fabrication plants around the globe. And obviously everybody wears protective equipment. So I was really pleased that we managed to be part of the 1 million personal protective equipment donation. And we managed to get some into the London hospitals pretty quick in that first week, which was pretty well. So again, to your point, large companies, we have to move very, very quickly as well. But really the thing is that make sure our employees are safe and their families are safe, making sure our customers get what they want. And, I'm also proud from a business point of view that we've managed to keep our operations globally about 95%. Because if there is a viral pandemic, being in a clean room, building silicon is probably one of the safest places on the planet.
And Gori, perhaps you could pick up on that and also and tell us a bit on what for you has marked out the businesses that have responded best, because I believe you work with both big and small in how you educate and train up their people. So you would have seen firsthand where businesses are thriving and where they're just about surviving. So I'd love to hear, sort of having listened to the other three, kind of what you think marks out the best in how they've responded.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective and from what we've seen in the clients that we've worked with is that some of the industries that were perhaps starting to go through a little bit of digital transformation, sort of early doors before this all kicked off, have been knocked back quite a bit by this, right? The acceleration that they've sort of witnessed of what they were planning for maybe 5 or 6 years or 3 or 4 years worth of transformation compiled into 2 or 3 months has definitely shocked a few. But what's really interesting, actually one of the things that I'm also proud of is how some of the teams and some of the clients that we've worked with is giving them the confidence to believe they can have the agility that they need to be able to adapt to this current climate, and also making them understand the importance of investing in their people. And I think that's what's really interesting, because when you talk about survive versus thrive, right? Or not just versus, but those that are in survival mode are thinking, right, we've got to keep the lights on. How are we going to do this well? But realizing that the people are going through kind of a bit of a fragile state during this as well. And I know Flick sort of mentioned this before, but that personal well-being. I mean, we work with many sort of L&D managers, learning development managers, who are now seeing their role even slightly adapt to look at more wellness of their individuals, not just improving on their learning, which is super, super interesting. So, the businesses that I do, sort of find that are doing well, or the clients that we find are doing well, are ones that are investing really well in their people, right? So understanding that roles are beginning to shift based on their adapting to the crisis and being able to upskill and onboard them quickly to do this and find a framework to do this as well is really, really important. And I think just on the point of what I'm proud of, and so to go back to this, but I think seeing the the incredible levels of agility, even within my team, to be able to adapt to this has been incredible. And actually, on the other side, there's we're a startup sort of moving to scale up sort of size, and I found that some of even our leaders internally have this sort of itch to want to pivot and itch to want to learn quickly, which is really interesting. Not that anybody wants a crisis to come about, but it's that itch to kind of flex their creative prowess and really kind of help guide people through this. So it's been quite interesting actually seeing that in clients as well. Has been incredibly satisfying.
I'd love for the panel to pick up on that point, on how you maintain some of the unleashed entrepreneurialism within your teams and your clients' teams, because when we've seen that massively within Founders Intelligence as well, both from our people, but also some of our clients have delivered projects that were slated for 6 months, 12 months or longer and delivered them in 2 weeks, right? They've just suddenly learned that with a clear purpose and aligned teams, small teams working hard, you can get amazing things done quickly. So does anyone on the panel want to pick up on that, about how you maintain that once some sort of new normal is approaching?
Yeah, Robert, I think 2 very quick examples. I mean, if the Nightingale Hospital can be built within 10 or 15 days, why does my next pricing tool for all of my sales guys take 1 year to roll out? So there's a whole pivot shift, as Gori talked about, that agility. And then just on the entrepreneurial side, I mean, obviously we have a lot of technical people, and they tend to have things like laser cutters in their sheds in their back garden. So we had a whole team of people that currently, I think, today to produce 6,000 face shields. And again, we do it with our blessing. We give them legal, financial support from the company, but they're doing it in their own time. All this flexible working, and I think just having that entrepreneurial spirit in everything they do, I think is phenomenal. And I think this has to continue. And I think it's a new norm now in how a job description is written, how you employ people, that you want that innovative, creative, I call it multi-dimensional inclusion as well. So, people from all sorts, to come in and show what their worldview is, because it's very different from, traditionally how I've been brought up. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah. And Flick, could you perhaps pick up on what you've seen, or what the audience members should learn from the last few months as well, and how you prepare better for the future? Because obviously it's your...
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of things I'd like to bring out there. So business continuity plans have always been the thing that's stuck in a drawer, and no one's really given a thought to. So one thing we have learned is getting companies to really understand how they need to be flexible, not just in where the workforce sits or what kind of things that they're doing each day, but also the skills. So going back to what you were saying, Gori, is what skills do we need? Because actually a lot of the roles in a lot of companies has changed, even from marketing and sales to what technology is needed, and also maybe the construct of the organization of where you access core real thought leadership skills, so that they can actually, because resilience is going to pivot again. So what we say in IBM is we don't say the new normal, we say the next normal, because we actually don't know what is going to happen. So although we've got a concept of emerge smarter, let's have a think about how we, most important especially now, is diversity and inclusion in everything that we do. And the usual blockers, let's say, of where people would hunt for jobs because the commute's too much, or the childcare, or implications, or maybe disabilities or neural disabilities, we now can actually make sure we've got jobs and real diversity and inclusion for all those jobs as well. So I think we don't know what the new normal is. We do know what the current and next normal is, and then we'll have to adapt again. And so the one thing I would urge is make sure you've got that flexibility, as Gori and Caroline said, to make sure we can actually sort of flex to where we're going next.
Great, and maybe let's stay on that topic of diversity and inclusion for a minute, because obviously the last few weeks have held up the kind of spotlight, especially to the tech industry and especially on race. But we want to talk about diversity and inclusion in all of its different aspects. Maybe would anyone on the panel like to talk to the audience about what it is that how you may have supported through the crisis, the resilience of your teams, and especially of members of ethnic minority background or with other in other diverse ways, and also what we can learn coming out of it, and how we can use the crisis to get better.
Yeah, well, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on this one. Actually, I think we've run sort of a number of programs that we had done before this, where we're trying to really raise that or shine a light on the challenges that people face around tackling the inclusion barrier or problem that they have in their organization. And what crisis unfortunately does to some leaders is have them almost, albeit they be agile, kind of revert back to their comfort zones, revert to the networks they engage in, and don't quite realize that the crisis can affect people at different scales, right? So not just COVID, but other things that are going on in the current climate. And I think what leaders need to be really aware of is that, all things really aren't equal, and they don't quite have the level of inclusion that they might think they have in their organizations. And if you are thinking about crisis, and you might think, your crisis planning or that continuity planning that you've done before might not have had the consideration towards inclusion in the organization. Flick was absolutely right about the level of accessibility that, working remotely would give us from a hiring perspective, which means people are, more accessible to that. But at the same time, investing in programs that minimize hiring biases, really thinking about, as you are building for the team that are going to have the skill set you need in the future, are you investing in the right platforms and the right networks that can get you access to the right talent? Because there is talent out there, and I think often businesses sort of feel like I've put it out to everybody, but actually it's not as accessible as we might believe it is when we put out, a simple job post, for example, right? So, some of the stuff that we do is we actually run programs that actually try to empower Black and BAME leaders in organizations to progress. And this is the time that we ramp that up even more to ensure that they are seen. Because you might be aware that, COVID has impacted the BAME community, X-fold, right, than many others. And people need to be very conscious that without knowing the true causes behind it, we have to be aware that it does mean that some of these individuals, Flick was mentioning, people are working multiple jobs, but the personal resilience, the things that they're dealing with outside of the workplace, will also impact how they're able to progress in the organizations as well. So it's just making sure we pay attention to that. And again, as I mentioned, the companies that are doing well are the ones that are actually investing in their people, but making sure that it's keeping it more inclusive than ever.
Caroline, you're nodding away particularly vigorously.
I think it's really brought to light the kind of conversation and the debate. And actually, just thinking about my own business, in some axes of diversity we do well, and in others we do really poorly. And actually, I think particularly over the last week, with the Black Lives Matter campaign, I think it has prompted, debate at my leadership team this week of saying we're not doing enough. How do we do more? And exactly to your point, Gori, in terms of, it's very easy when you're recruiting, particularly when you're under time pressure. Startups are, they're focused on hitting milestones in a certain time, or scale ups. Do people go, well, I know that person, or I know somebody to recruit through networks, and that is one of the least inclusive things that you can do. And so the conversation really in our meeting this week was, how do we avoid that? What are we doing in our screening process and our attraction processes? What are we doing differently to break some of these cycles? And we're not doing enough, and we're not educated enough. And our first decision actually was, we need to educate ourselves better as to what we can do better. And I guess awareness is the first thing. Before Fluidly, I ran a business that was in innovation consulting. And one of the things that you do in innovation consulting is really notice how much humans are creatures of routine. We're super lazy. If you think about it, in the morning, you do exactly the same things. When you get out of bed, you check your phone, you put on your clothes in the same way, you brush your teeth in the same way. You're creatures of routine. And we like that. And I think to get any form of innovation, you have to kind of break that routine and see something differently. But I think many of the issues that we have, when we don't see diversity and inclusions, we're just trapped in that routine. And I can always remember teaching my daughter to play cards. And the first thing I did was teach her, ace, king, queen, jack, 10. And the first question out of her mouth was, why does the king rank higher than the queen? Oh, that's an excellent point. I never thought about it. It just become a sort of accepted status quo that you sort of absorbed into your own knowledge, and you don't even recognize a lot of the implicit bias or cultural absorption that you have taken to get to that point that inherently has that ranking or that setup. And so I think trying to break some of those routines is really important to driving diversity and innovation. And the good thing about a pandemic is it just forces all these routines to be changed. You've reached a kind of break point of doing things differently. And actually, I think if we can use that break point to unconstrained thinking and see things differently through a different lens, then actually unleashes tremendous innovation and tremendous creativity. Much as we're all getting kind of zoomed out, maybe there's a good opportunity to do things differently.
And as our routines have been fundamentally disrupted as leaders as well, I'd love to hear from anyone on the panel kind of how you personally have managed to get the support you need, and how you've found leading teams through this crisis.
I'm happy to share, Rob. I agree with what kind of Caroline said. I think what we've tried to do is just empathize, with the team and the people. It's quite interesting. I challenged our HQ because they gave you like a structured format of how to do video calls like this. So you've got my crappy bookcase behind, but in the manual it says make sure you've got a perfect white wall behind you or something like that. So I think giving people permission, that the children come in. I'm lucky. I think my dog's been taken for a walk. Otherwise, we would have a 32 kilo dog barking in the background. And I think it's just giving people permission that it's okay. That's a new norm. It's something that's quite nice. It humanizes kind of the element for everybody, and I think that makes a difference. We're all incredibly busy. I think as well as being zoomed out, I think sorry I came off, I was on mute is the other phrase that I think we probably heard many times. But also I've kind of reached all through the organization, and I think in the first 5 weeks I did like 120 15-minute one-on-ones just to check in that people were okay. And it was nothing to do with work. Okay. And even things like, hey, what workspace do you have? How many people have you got to take care of? And you have to be careful that you're not prying, but you're just asking, and get them to share information. Hey, I'm having to look after an elderly relative, and that time, and just trying to humanize everything. And I think the world, I hope the world will be a better place. The working life will be a better place, just because everything's more humanized than it was before. And I think it's phenomenal. And I've learned so much from other people in the last 2 months or 3 months it's been now than I've ever done before as a leader.
Adrian, I agree with you. If I could just step in and talk about both topics, if I may. So I'm exactly the same, Adrian. I have learned more about my colleagues. It used to be what it was like 30 years ago, where we all used to meet each other in the canteen and we used to know each other's kids and have a work family. And we're now going back to having a work family in a community where people can actually be human. So something we say in IBM is we want you to bring your whole self to work. And if I'd like to also touch on diversity and inclusion. It's been a really, really tough couple of weeks for my Black colleagues. I have Black colleagues, I have Black mentees, I have Black friends. All of them have found the word that I found when I personally reached in and had a cup of coffee with them is it's been very, very overwhelming. And just like the Duchess of Wessex said, the only wrong thing to say is actually nothing. So as well as us taking the Embrace pledge, we've also made sure that we are talking to everyone to say, look, lean in, just check if we're all okay. And it has been a very emotional time for all of us. So I genuinely believe that corporations have a bigger duty of care to all their employees to just check, not just check they're okay, but make sure they've got that overall support. So that goes back to bring your whole self to work, bring your kids, bounce them on the knee. I've read stories over we use WebEx and Zoom and office meetings and all the other things I've learned. We've had dogs, we've met dogs. You'll probably meet mine in a minute who's got dementia, so she'll come toddling through. But I like it. I think there's a lot of collateral. I know there's a lot of collateral damage, but there is a lot of collateral beauty where we actually know each other as humans again, rather than this rather cold, go straight into work. And I quite like it. I think, Adrian, same as you, I've learned so much more as a leader and realizing how many people have said, thank you for checking in on me.
Yeah, exactly.
I needed that. And realizing how important it is just to say, how are you? And stop and actually genuinely listen to what their problems are.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree with you. I really hope we maintain it coming out as well. And people have experienced it now, so it's more likely that hopefully we do bring ourselves to work in the future. And I guess, I'd love to, in the last 5 minutes, to really move on to the kind of future looking, what what does the new normal look like? We know from the last recession that the companies who invested in innovation, invested in their own technology, invested in their own propositions during the last crisis are the ones, who massively outperformed in the following 10 years. And in the startup world as well, the cohort founded in 2009 to 2012 is the most valuable ever startup cohort, so the Ubers, Airbnbs of the world. And I'd love to hear from you guys how you are beginning to think about the propositions of your business, the support you give to your clients, and how you can begin with the uncertainty we have ahead to take some real bets in that space.
So I'm happy to start. I don't want to steal the mic, but there's three things that we're seeing coming into the future. Again, the next normal, and what we're saying is emerge smarter. But we're seeing three things. How the hell do I keep my revenue streams going? How do I reduce my cost to a bare minimum? And how do we build resilience? And that's technical, business, and personal again. So coming out of it, I would, from a passionate point of view, I would very much like to see some standards around resilience, in terms of, if you're running companies, you have to have an ability to be able to demonstrate how quickly you can bounce back up if you do go down. Not just assume you're not going to go down. As you know, in the news, there's been a significant hack over the last couple of days in a car manufacturer. So again, it's going down, and I'm more concerned for hospitals and things that we desperately need national critical infrastructure to look after. So I'm looking after biological viruses, absolutely in parallel with cyber viruses, and I would hate to see a cyber virus pandemic, and we're seeing a huge amount of activity. So keep everybody socially distanced and make sure we keep companies alive, as well as making sure we're cyber social distance, so we don't get a double whammy of huge companies being taken out as per yesterday, so that we can actually make sure we've got that resilience baked into humans, so they can actually have caregiver passports that we do in IBM to make sure they can bounce their personal life around their work life. Technical resilience, so that we stop technology being hands-on, make it dark, so we can use as much automation and orchestration as possible. And then the business resilience of making sure companies can work out where their new revenue streams are coming from and startups are coming from, because of course a lot of the things that were there probably aren't going to be as profitable going forward in the short and midterm.
I think actually, if it's okay, to jump in, Rob, on this one, it's some really, really interesting points that Flick, and one of the things we are trying to look at the word new normal, right? New normal, next normal, whatever it might be. I mean, as an entrepreneur and a stoic, actually, which means I can adapt quite quickly depending on what it is put in front of us. Our organization really looks at the current climate and looks at how we evolve our propositions on a regular basis to adapt to what our clients need, regardless, right? So what it means is that our new normal is actually just our normal, right? It's like what we have to do. And when you talk about entrepreneurial spirit, which is continuously try to evolve, continuously try to help your clients evolve as well. And we've had to do that. I mean, we run sort of large scale training programs for organizations, even like sort of Google and a few others. And we often find ourselves having to be faster than them in how we help them along in building these programs, which means that we have to be sort of super quick and super agile. But that actually builds in yourself this level of agility that once you really sort of crack and feel comfortable to be able to adopt and move forward with, and then actually empower your human capital to help them do the same thing. It really helps you sort of stay ahead of the curve, right? And that again, using the curve is not a good analogy for what we're kind of going through at the moment. But I think what is interesting to me is there is this balance, and I think hopefully, Caroline, you talk about sort of the cash sort of side of it as well, where people are looking at what have they got in the bag, what does survival mode look like, and actually, what we look at sort of resilience as, it's not attached to a monetary value, to be honest, and you can't always imagine that cash in the bank equates to safety, right? It's about what does your human capital do? How do they value innovation and resilience? What are the values internally? Actually, it's one of those biggest things where internally we look to build culture carriers in the organization, people that regardless of whatever they're doing, they can carry that culture throughout. And you've got large organizations like retailers that are now shifting their head or sort of leader back office staff into frontline sort of retail roles because and skills are massively moving around. So that agility is super important, and that's not going to be the normal forever, but it's something that you need to be able to adapt to. So that's sort of how we like to try to approach it.
And yeah, just as we got our sort of last minute, I've been trying to ask questions that the audience has been posing as we go, but there's one specific here. Have you have you seen increased appetite for innovation, or is everyone in a purely defensive mode at the moment?
Oh, huge amounts of innovation, and sharing knowledge and putting themselves out there to help and using as what skills we have to just help. So yes, I love it. I absolutely love it. All the barriers are broken down.
One of my favourite stories is a while ago about a business called the Jubilee Project that asked adults, if you could change one thing about your body, what would it be? And adults say things like, I wish I was taller, I wish I had my stretch marks removed, I wish my shoulders were the same height. And then they asked children the same question, if there's one thing about your body, what would you change? And children say things like, I want a shark's mouth so I can eat loads of food, or I want a mermaid's tail so I can swim really fast. And I think we tend to see substitutions, savings of time, savings of cost. We tend to fix things as adults, but I think the real innovation comes when it's an addition. And how do you create a kind of superpower? And for me, this kind of change is an opportunity to create a new layer, a new set of superpowers. So I think it's quite exciting to see what innovation is going to be out there.
What a beautiful way to wrap up with a beautifully put philosophical thought. Let's all think about what the superpowers of our organizations should be and how we can develop them. And I think, the thing we've heard most through the panel is it's all about empowering our people to come up with that. And, you've heard that from every one of our incredible panelists. So thank you all very much. And maybe I hand over to Ollie.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. That's Rob Chapman there from Founders Intelligence. A mermaid's tail, a shark's mouth. What wonderful images. Well, we're running up to the Finn moment on the screen here at LTW Connects. I have to tell you, so many questions. That was a great session. Thank you, Rob and team. Many of our audience will be wondering, can't an ace rank higher than a king and a queen in some games? The answer, of course, is yes, it can. And we're very grateful to all the aces who have appeared in the last hour or so. Also, you're probably wondering, how big is Adrian's dog? I mean, that is an absolute whopper, isn't it, ladies and gents? I'm only sorry we didn't get to see it today. Two very quick plugs, if I may. The inimitable Russ Shaw is coming up in this very space. He's the founder of the world's most influential grassroots tech network, Tech London Advocates, and he's going to be chairing us through the next session from 4:30. Two organizations have caught my eye: the fantastic Onfido, you say Onfido, I say Onfido, and the Dots. That's LinkedIn for people who don't go to work wearing a suit, by the way. So Pip Jameson is up as well. And one final tip-off, if I may: Accelerate Her is running a brilliant program of events. It's the last chance to register for that. Now that's throughout tomorrow, that's Friday. They've got some brilliant sessions. Everyone, including Dame Vivian Hunt from McKinsey, will be on the Accelerate Her virtual stages throughout tomorrow. And the team have done a brilliant job of curating that. So if you want to join the next session, just click on the agenda and add it to your own schedule. But it's just for me to say thank you to everybody who's joined us, for Janet for the warm introduction, to the Secretary of State, Oliver Dowden, for his warm remarks, of course, to Roger Lynch and Laura Citron for their brilliant fireside chat, to all of the panel for their excellent thoughts. I honestly could have listened to them for another hour, and I hope we get some similarly positive feedback. I think Rob did a brilliant job with that panel and has stirred up loads of good conversation. London Tech Week returns face-to-face. Will it be virtual? Will it be hybrid? Will it be something else? Will we be rolling around in Zorba balls? We just don't know. But what we do know is we will keep you posted. If you've enjoyed this, please spread the word. LTW Connects. For now, from me, Ollie Barrett, it's a huge thank you. For now, goodbye.